Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Armenian Studies Program Spring Lecture Series. I'm Professor Vahe Tachjian of the Armenian Studies Program. It's really exciting to see so many of you here for our first presentation in our Spring Lecture Series. Our Spring Lecture Series is composed of a variety of events and supported by the Leon S. Peters Foundation, and we're very happy that we're cooperating with the Leon S. Peters Foundation to present a really outstanding series of events. And today I'd like to start off by introducing some of our students. So if our Armenian Students Organization executive members who are here would come, I'd like you to introduce them to you, to our Fresno audience. We have Tatev Ovanesyan, she's the secretary of the Armenian Students Organization. Marine Vartanyan is the president of the Armenian Students Organization. And Vahe Tachjian is the public relations officer for the Armenian Students Organization. We're very proud of our students. We have, for those of you that don't know, there are approximately 400 to 500 Armenian students that we can identify as being Armenian, but there are probably more that have names that we can't figure out. But it's a big population on campus, and I can tell you that this semester we're doing very well with our courses. We're fully enrolled in our courses. And we're doing our Armenian language courses, Armenian history, Armenian art, Armenian literature, and Armenian culture courses. I'd also like to tell you that the Armenian Students Organization is going to be involved in a lot of activities, as everyone here probably knows. As the 100th anniversary of the commemoration of the Armenian Genocide, there are a variety of community activities that are taking place almost every weekend in Fresno and in the surrounding area. If you would like the best up-to-date calendar for that, you need to go online to the Armenian Genocide Centennial website. It's agcfresno.org, and they have the most up-to-date activities, and including just last week the opening of the wonderful art show at the Fresno Art Museum. And Joyce and Carol are here, and they have more information, I think, about that probably, or they can tell us at the end maybe some information about the hours for the museum. It is well worth it, if you haven't been to the Fresno Art Museum, to see this event and to see this exhibit that's going to be up all semester. The students have a lot of activities planned. They're going to be making t-shirts, so next time you come to our next event or the event after, we'll have some t-shirts ready for you, and they'll tell you about their upcoming activities. They're going to help me out. They're going to pass out to anybody that doesn't have a flyer that would like one. I would like to very briefly tell you about our next 3 events that are coming up just within the next month. And just raise your hand if you'd like one, and they'll pass it out on both sides. The first event is going to be actually next 2 weeks from Wednesday. That is February the 11th. And our speaker is going to be Dr. Vahe Tachjian. And we have at Fresno State what is called our Kazan Visiting Professorship in Armenian Studies. And we invite every year a visiting professor for 1 semester to teach a course related to Armenian history or the Armenian Genocide. Dr. Tachjian is a graduate of UCLA, and she will be giving that first lecture in the series, 3 public lectures. And her theme is going to be the Armenian Genocide in film. So she's going to be actually showing film excerpts and talking about how those represent the Armenian Genocide. There's going to be a reception in the gallery area, which is right outside, from 6:30 to 7:30. We'd like to welcome all of you to attend before the lecture. We'll have some food and drinks, and you'll get to meet our visiting professor. All of our events are free. That is, all of our public lectures are free, so there's no charge. And you know about parking, and it's there on that flyer. Yes, I'll tell you that, because we don't get codes that far ahead. But actually, if you look at the numbers, it's going to be the next one. So, on February 17th, which is a Tuesday, we're going to have Vahe Tachjian from Los Angeles, who has just published his new book called Historic Armenia After 100 Years. And it's a travel guide, a pictorial book about historic Armenia. He's just been traveling the last 2 years. And the book just was published about a week ago. So we're going to be one of the first places in the United States that's going to get Vahe Tachjian to speak. Right here, same place, February 17th. And then on February 26th, Dr. Sergio Laporta, my colleague in Armenian Studies, will be giving a talk as part of what's called the Fresno Talks series, which are student-nominated talks by professors. So he was nominated by students, and he was picked from the committee to give a talk on Who Cares? Genocide, Historical Memory, and Moral Responsibility. And this is not going to be in our hall here, but it's going to be in the Satellite Student Union, the very large hall in the middle of campus. So please note that it's in a different place. Don't come here. It's in the Satellite Student Union, and there's a 6:30 reception and then a 7 o'clock talk. These are just in the next month, and we'll be culminating those activities on March 1st with our annual banquet. And this year, we're honoring our students, our 40th anniversary of our Armenian Students Organization. President Castro will be there, our provost will be there, our dean will be there. We'd like to invite you to come to that. I'll be sending out information in the mail, and you can learn more about that. Now, tonight, we have the pleasure of having with us, all the way from Berlin, Germany, Dr. Vahe Tachjian, who's the director of the Harput-Mamüretülaziz project. And he's going to speak today about a very interesting topic, and it's very interesting, I can see, because of all of the people that have come to be here. How many of you are Harput-Mamüretülaziz? Go ahead, look at this. So you'll have to give a series on every one of the regions, I think. A very interesting talk on building the model Ottoman citizen, life and death in the region of Harput-Mamüretülaziz. Dr. Tachjian has been traveling all over the United States. He was just telling me he was on a tour of the East Coast. He just arrived in California and gave a talk in Los Angeles yesterday, and he's returning back to Germany on Saturday. So it's been only about a week and a half, and he's had about 6 lectures, so he's really seeing the United States. I'm not going to tell you more about his talk because he'll tell you about the talk, but I do want to tell you about the new book that has also been published by the Harput-Mamüretülaziz project called Ottoman Armenians, Life, Culture, Society, Volume Number 1. And this is the first in a series of volumes which will be published on the various regions of historic Armenia. It's full of historic photographs, it's full of historical information, and after our lecture tonight, we'll have it outside on the table. Those of you that would like to buy that to help the project as well, we encourage you to do that. It's really a very high quality scholarly work, but also one that is interesting to everyone because of the photographs and the information behind that. Let me tell you a little bit more about Dr. Tachjian. I mentioned he's the director and chief editor of the Harput-Mamüretülaziz project. He was born in Lebanon and earned his PhD in history and civilization at the École des Hautes Études et Sciences Sociales, that's my good French for you, in Paris. And his research covers the period of the French occupation of Cilicia, Syria, and Lebanon between the 2 world wars, and the Armenians in the Ottoman Empire and refugee problems in the Middle East. He's published many different works. As I said, he's a well-known speaker in many areas of the world. And it's really a pleasure for us to have with us tonight Dr. Vahe Tachjian. Dr. Tachjian.
Thank you, Bardo, for giving me this wonderful opportunity to talk in Fresno. So my presentation today will have 2 parts. The main part will be the story of, or a presentation based on 2 memoirs, or I'm trying to reconstruct the everyday life, the evolution of events in Harput between 1908 and 1915, a very crucial period in the Armenian history and in general in Ottoman history. So after that I finish this main presentation, I will go then to present, or I will try to make a guided visit to the website, to the Harput-Mamüretülaziz website. It will take perhaps 15 minutes, and then the door will be open to all kinds of questions, collaboration offers, etc. The main talk, as I said, is based on, or the main protagonist of the first presentation is 2 persons. 2 of them are from Harput, or 2 of them live in Harput. One of them is Ovannes Bujikanyan, and the second is Vahe-Tachjian. Both of them have written many articles in Harput or published outside Harput in newspapers in Istanbul or in United States before 1915. Both of them had written, or Vahe-Tachjian had also written his memoirs. Vahe-Tachjian was very active publicist, but also he participated in various debates taking place in Harput. So there were two main figures, two main, let's say, notables in Harput, in the town of Harput. So, and I would like to start my talk with a quote from Hovhannes Bucsikanyan. Quote, "The Armenian question and Ottoman problem is an enigma for me, and I wouldn't deem it wisdom on your part if, given this situation, you return to the homeland. Everyone living here at every minute is ready for meaningless death." So these words are taken from a letter written by Hovhannes Bucsikanyan in Harput on January 9, 1913, to his friend, Mesrop Jamgojian, who was living at that time in the United States. Hovhannes Bucsikanyan, born in Çunkuş in 1873. Çunkuş is a little town south of Harput and east of Diyarbakır. Bucsikanyan was killed in 1915. He was one of the luminaries of the town of Harput. He was a high-ranking authority at the local Euphrates College. Euphrates College, as many of you know already, was an American, or was an institution or education institution founded by the American Protestant missionaries in the second half of the 19th century. And the overwhelming majority of its teachers and students were Armenians. Bucsikanyan was also a prominent representative of the Protestant community and a tireless defender of the restored constitutional regime of 1908. He welcomed the Young Turk Revolution with great hope and expectations. And in the years that followed, he continued to stress the importance of this event and the need to support the new regime in the pages of newspapers and public forums. In his letter he wrote in 1913, as we saw, however, we can already note his disillusionment. How are we to explain such an evolution of opinion, this journey from enthusiasm to evident disenchantment? So this paper sets out to present Armenian daily life in Harput region and the process of developments that took place there based on Armenian primary sources. The road leading from 1908 revolution to the 1915 genocide in historical terms has never been an unfamiliar period. So we know there are numerous academic studies in a variety of languages which shed ample light on these decisive years of the Ottoman Empire. But the aim of this paper, however, is to focus attention on just one place in this extensive empire. And that place is the Harput Plain, with the towns of Harput and Mamüretülaziz, or as was called at the time Mezire, and present-day Elazığ. So these two main cities of the Harput province and the surrounding Armenian villages. To reconstruct a local history, and in this case that of a rural population, because Harput Plain main population was, as you know, was very rural. It's never been an easy task. Locating primary sources constitutes the biggest challenges. Oftentimes their scarcity and inadequacies limit their explanatory power. But unlike in many other cities and regions in the Ottoman Empire, though there is an abundance of primary sources for the Harput-Mamüretülaziz region. There are about 40 Hushamadian genre books, so these books written by genocide survivors, this sort of chroniclers that serve as basic sources regarding the history of this region. And in addition to this kind of, to these genre books, there are more than a dozen published memoirs, as well as multiple correspondences, Armenian political party records, and newspaper articles, all written in or about Harput. And these sources open up a wide vista on the cultural, economic, political, social, and even personal events in the region. Rich and diverse in their reach, these sources serve as highly insightful reference points for the writing of a differential microhistory. Moreover, we are far from exhaustively utilizing Armenian primary sources in this article. There are numerous letters of correspondence, bulletins, memoirs, and memory books that are published and are kept in the archives of various Armenian institutions, and such material is also to be found in family collections scattered across the globe. So this paper, then, is also an attempt to bring together this scattered material written in Armenian about Harput. At the same time, I seek to show the inestimable value of Armenian primary sources to studying the history of Ottoman Armenians and the Ottoman Empire in general. And we need to reflect on the use of primary sources in Armenian, or more correctly, their non-use. The use and study of Armenian primary sources has for a long time been the missing link in Ottoman studies. And despite the wealth of material written in Armenian, the perspective of Armenian authors on their own issues and daily life is not represented. This little known but crucial dimension of the Ottoman world, and particularly the descriptions of rural life, are important sources for Ottoman studies. And I'm convinced that their inclusion in the study of the Ottoman Empire can enrich attempts to achieve more complete understanding of Ottoman history. And this problem of historiography becomes apparent with the two men this paper focuses on. So Hovhannes Boudjiganian and Donabet Ulejian. Donabet Ulejian was born in Harput in 1875 and died in 1917 in Garin, Erzurum. It is sufficient to glance at their works to see that we are dealing with two exceptional intellectuals and brilliant minds that lived and worked in the town of Harput, in this provincial center that had already become one of the most important places of Armenian education and enlightenment in the Ottoman Empire by the late 19th century. Many of their writings impress through their depth, linguistic richness, and wealth of ideas. Each of them is the fruit of critical mind. Boudjiganian and Ulejian were not members of any Armenian political party, although Ulejian was a member of the Euphrates Freemason Lodge in Harput. Rather, they were believers in liberal thought. They were supporters of law and order, of democratic institutions, and the strengthening of the role of the church within Armenian society. After 1908, especially Boudjiganian would not shrink from espousing their ideological views in the press or directly in debates taking place in Harput with representatives putting forth socialist views, those of the Hınçak Party and of the EVR Tachjian Party. Boudjiganian was one of the first Armenians arrested in Harput during the genocide. He was killed afterwards. Ulejian was arrested, but later escaped. So in the decades that followed, in the annals of post-genocide Armenian historiography, Boudjiganian and Ulejian would be remembered more as educational pioneers of the Euphrates College. They were not revolutionaries, and their views differed from those ideological political currents in the Armenian diaspora that left their mark on the local communities and had a fundamental impact on the reconstructed Armenian historiography. The works of Lülejian and Bujikanyan were published in single volumes in 1955 in Fresno and in 1974 in Beirut, Lebanon, respectively. So here are the two works, those of Bujikanyan and the other of Lülejian. So, but these were family initiatives. I mean, the descendants of Bujikanyan and Lülejian, they were through their initiative that this 100 pages, several hundred pages of memoirs, of written articles, of written texts were saved from oblivion. And many of these pages shed new light on Harput local life, on the emotions and the experiences of these two Harput residents regarding the 1908 Young Turk Revolution and how the ideas of these two Ottoman citizens developed during the years that followed. Reading Lülejian and Bujikanyan, we encounter a different reading of the history of relations between mainly the Armenian and Turkish populations, particularly in dealing with bilateral relations subsequent to 1908. The conventional approach in historiography, both Turkish historiography or Ottoman Turkish historiography and Armenian historiography, is to study the positions, policies, and relations of the İttihad Vahe Tachjian or Committee of Union and Progress, the CUP, the ruling party of the Ottoman Empire at that time, and on the Turkish side, and those of the Armenian Revolutionary Federation, EVRF, Tachjian Tuchum, and to lesser extent the Hınçak party on the Armenian side. Bujikanyan and Lülejian, as chroniclers from a provincial town, open a new vista for the study of Turkish and Armenian relations. And without these family initiatives, the works of Bujikanyan and Lülejian would probably have remained unknown, just as similar works that continue to be kept in family closets or the archives of various institutions. So this paper reveals the impact of the establishment of the Ottoman constitutional regime on the daily life in the Harput region. And then focusing mainly on the writings of Bujikanyan and Lülejian, we try to see the hopes that these two intellectuals placed on the Ottoman state with its constitutional regime and the importance they placed on strengthening democracy and freedom within Ottoman society. The removal in 1908 of the Hamidian dictatorial regime, so the regime which was led by the Sultan Abdul Hamid, and the restoration of the constitution were truly political and psychological life-changing events for a people who for decades lived in despotic conditions. And in the months that followed 1908 revolution, one could already observe signs of this change in Harput's everyday life. Armenians started to feel relatively more secure, which inspired self-confidence and prompted people to take steps that they had avoided in preceding years. Thus, of symbolic importance is that we see more windows being installed in village homes and an increase in two-story homes being built in contrast to the proliferation of subterranean houses up till then. The change is especially evident in educational field. The old schools functioning in the villages of the Harput plain were renovated or built anew. Schools for girls were opened in many villages. Teachers, both male and female, graduating from the colleges in the towns, mainly Harput-Mamüretülaziz or Mezire, are invited to take up positions in the villages. And the Ottoman constitution allowed for formally banned initiatives in town schools as well. For example, in 1909, an Armenian printing press started operating in Euphrates College, which prints, among others, the college official newspaper, Yefrat. And every day, an average of 3,000 pages in Armenian were printed there. Donabek Lülejian, who was both an Armenian luminary in the town of Harput and a teacher in the Euphrates College, also experienced this jubilation of newfound freedom. In 1910, he was studying at that time in the United States, first at Yale and later at Cornell. So in 1910, he sent his congratulations to the college graduates of Euphrates College back home. In his letter, he already sees new prospects for the missionary institution to play in the region. And in 1912, he left the United States and returned to his native Harput. The forming of Armenian theater companies was also considered a development of the new times. Instead of the limited number of theater groups, new companies were formed in the towns and many villages in this post-constitutional period. The slogans of the Constitution were echoed as far away in the United States, where thousands of immigrants from Harput had relocated from the 19th century. They were mostly laborers, as you know, working in factories along America's mainly East Coast. Many of them considered the time appropriate to return to the homeland and start a new life with their families and relatives with the money they had earned abroad. The new atmosphere of freedom also impacted the political organizational life in Harput. Armenian political parties that formerly operated underground during the Sultan Hamid time and were persecuted opened their offices in Armenian populated towns and villages. So, as was the case with all Armenians living throughout the Ottoman Empire, the 1909 massacre of thousands of Armenians in Adana region did a heavy blow to the jubilation by Armenians in the Harput region. A feeling of collective confusion and distrust towards the future became palpable. And this mentality was also expressed in the memoirs of Harput Armenians and other writings, press, articles, letters of the time. This is not to say the constitution was welcomed with equal excitement by all Armenians. Many regarded the new freedoms with suspicion, and doubtlessly this mistrust was directed to the leaders of the CUP, so the Committee of Union and Progress, the ruling party, who took over the reins of power in the empire and the non-democratic modus operandi they adopted. So viewing things from Harput, there were many reasons for uncertainty regarding the unfolding situation. While some found a way out by emigrating, mainly to the United States, others, and here we refer to Armenian intellectuals like Religion and Bujikanian, sought a solution to the problem by improving local conditions. And in this context, when we examine the discussions that took place at the time on the Armenian stage, we note the following dominant line of thought: the strengthening and solidification of the state, the Ottoman state. This may seem a bit contradictory, especially in hindsight, but the jubilation created by the Ottoman constitution hadn't completely waned. Many Armenians, including prominent figures from Harput, were convinced that the best guarantor for improving their daily living conditions and their human and cultural rights was the forging of a strong state. But from their perspective, the stress placed on the role of the state did not mean the development of centralized state authority that in the name of country's welfare and security would be ready to intervene to the detriment of democracy and in opposition to individual liberties. And such law and order state was the CUP's much desired one-party rule. And the course of developments would show that this dictatorial tendency gradually became the reality throughout the empire's domain. From the vantage point of Harput intellectuals, the guarantor of a powerful state should respect the law and defend constitutional rights. The influential presence of state institutions should be extended to villages, preventing all types of anarchy and violations of the law. And Bujikanian writes in 1912, quote, "Without these freedoms and rights, the Constitution is a joke. Freedom, a dead element, and the truth, a lie," unquote. And naturally, one could find differences amongst the various Armenian ideological currents at the time. Nevertheless, the majority of the voices expressed in Harput pointed to the strengthening of state institutions as the key to the solution. Another important viewpoint, expressed directly or indirectly during these discussions, saw the future of Ottoman Armenians within the boundaries of the empire. In the majority, the concept held sway that given the conditions of the day, there was no solution to the Armenian issue outside the Ottoman Empire. The freedom of 1908 had unchained their voices. They boldly expressed themselves on national, Armenian issues and the future of the nation. I should stress here that the words nation and national used in various texts written at the time by the Harput intellectuals weren't used with their modernist meaning. Rather, we must understand them to mean proto-nation and proto-national. In other words, they should be understood as the Armenian community and its cultural values within the hybrid Ottoman environment. But when the discussion turned to matters of the homeland, oftentimes a dual meaning was evident. Sometimes reference was made to the Armenian homeland, that is to say those historic lands on which Armenians lived at the time. Elsewhere, it was clear that the concept of homeland referred to the Ottoman homeland, the ideal brought about due to the new constitutional order. Vahe provides a good example of this situation. This teacher at Euphrates College escaped in 1915 and took refuge in the Dersim Mountains. There, on slips of paper, he begins to write down his memoirs that were never completed or published by him. In 1917, in Garin, Erzurum, at the time under the control of Tsarist Russia, he contracted typhus and dies. The following lines are taken from the chapter Prison Memoirs that you find in this book, and where he presents the general sentiments in Harput before the genocide. These sentences were written in Dersim when the mass killings of Armenians at the hands of the Ottoman authorities hadn't yet finished, and the wounds Vahe received while tortured in jail hadn't yet healed. I quote, "It was not the demand of an independent Armenia that inspired Armenians. Each Armenian deserved this, but all reasonable individuals knew that such wasn't possible given the circumstances at the time. The term independence was only a concept for them. They were resigned to and convinced of the idea that the Armenian will live with the Turk and that the interests of the Armenian and Turk must be reconciled. Not every Armenian deserved foreign rule. Turkey was the only and best homeland for them, and if the Turk gave the Armenian that position to which the Armenian aspired, then the Armenian would have stopped loitering around foreign doors. He demanded equality, citizen rights, and wanted an end to religious intolerance, the lifting of darkness for Turks and Armenians to collaborate for the economic and political development of the country. This was the dream of the Armenian. This is what he strove for." Unquote. So Vahe also wrote about the importance of Turkish-Armenian understanding earlier in 1910 in Harput. He wrote, "The groans of the dreamed freedom, fraternity, and equality will continue for as long as that desired understanding is lacking." Unquote. And this lack of understanding was a serious concern for him, since he wrote, "These circumstances will cause continued economic crisis and storms and will be the reason for the destruction of the two races." Unquote. So it is clear that from an Armenian perspective, the strengthening of such understanding between Turks and Armenians, or Turks, Kurds and Armenians, would first and foremost derive from the creation of mutual confidence. During the post-constitutional years, when Vahe wrote the above-mentioned lines, one shouldn't view the Armenian demands for cultural, economic, and political autonomy as a threat to the empire. These demands derived from the collective consciousness of one primary group that constituted the empire, and their implementation on a variety of levels would have made the collective participation of these elements much more practical in terms of strengthening and enriching the empire, the Ottoman Empire. And here, it is instructive to recount an episode of the life in Harput to portray this dichotomy that existed between the Armenian elite and the CUP regarding the conceptualization of the constitution and its interpretation. In 1913, all larger Armenian communities celebrated the 1,500th anniversary of the creation of the Armenian alphabet in grand style. So they celebrated in Harput, but also in many other towns and villages all around the Ottoman Empire and outside the Ottoman Empire, in Tbilisi, in Baku, in Paris, and in all communities where Armenians were living at the time, existed at the time. The Harput region, with its rich educational institutions, would participate as well. On October 13, a grand procession of the students, pupils, and college students took place, while at the same time, accompanied by the sound of the church bells. So this celebration took place. And at the head of the procession were the college students, one of whom carried a banner of the Armenian alphabet. Another student held the purple-red flag of the Euphrates College, the Protestant American college, and a third of the Ottoman flag. Other students held aloft pictures of Nesrop, Mashtoz, and Saar-Kvarter, and the 1,500 procession wound its way through the streets of the town. And when they reached the Turkish Sultaniye school, or the state school, the marchers shouted, "Long live the Sultan, long live Saint Zahag and Saint Nesrop." The celebration was essentially an Armenian occasion to mark one of the most significant dates of Armenian culture. And the following words of Hovannes Mujikanyan, spoken before the crowd of celebrants, capture the spirit of the day. Quote, "Great jubilees give life to our fresh national spirit, grown, drowsy, numb, and extinguished. A people without national spirit are a living corpse. It neither has a national life or progress. A national history and literature, songs and traditions, moral and customs, a national church and school are truly the temples that keep this spirit alive," unquote. And when it was the turn of Vahe Tachjian to speak, he noted, I quote, "October 26, 1913 will mark the era of the Armenian Renaissance. These jubilees grand gala marks the reawakening of our self-consciousness, true patriotism, freedom of conscience, and intellectual progress. The treasures of the past are now ours. We are the inheritors of the written word and the press. The intellectual works and experiences of our Armenians belong to us. Like wondrous beams of light, they enlighten our surroundings. They inspire us, encourage us, and push us forward to carry out our duties expediently," unquote. In fact, the Ottoman constitution opened new horizons for Armenian collective life, and the most important being cultural freedom and its unhindered progress. And the magnificent celebration marking the Armenian alphabet was a clear expression of the new times. However, the CUP circles, the Turkish, the Ottoman ruling party circles of the town of Harput did not have the same opinion about these celebrations, but we will come to this later. From 1908 onwards, the main topic of Mujikanyan and Bülecan writings and speeches is the consolidation of the democratic rule, as well as the respect of the freedom of expression. At the first glance, these can be viewed as conventional ideas, but Mujikanyan and countless other Armenians like him realized that they live in tumultuous times and that their much cherished state of law and rights had not been fully formed. They were concerned, really concerned that democracy and with it the future of Ottoman Armenians was in downward spiral. And in Mujikanyan's opinion, the constitution was at risk. He writes, I quote, Reactionary sharp tones are in position threatening to suffocate it. Fanaticism is so entrenched in the hearts and minds of the dominant elements that the ideals of equality and fraternity are unrealizable and remain incomprehensible, unquote. And after all this, a pessimistic prospect for the future opened before him. He writes, "All problems demand new blood. Old hatreds mandate a new sacrifice. New blood stirs up memories of old problems, and the notion of settling problems and justice are stretched even more in the bloody hearts. Hope and the political chaos meet, and hope starts to fade," unquote. So clearly here Bujikanian was alluding to the killings of Armenians in Adana in 1909. Fear, uncertainty towards the future is stressed more in his thoughts. And he writes, I quote, "There is a volcano on the bottom of our country, and thunder roars in the sky. Chaos reigns over the surface. Flashes of light are to be found merely here and there. It is still night in Orient, and the scare rays of dawn, the beams of freedom and civilization, shine on the political horizon. Only God reads the fate and future of this country," unquote. So how to halt this precipitous process of events? Every diversion from constitutional principles placed the Ottoman Armenians before a new set of tragedies. Our Harput Armenian memoirists realized this, but at the same time, they have become passive observers of this process of events. The elite of the CUP made their positions more severe day by day. The prospect of Armenians, Turks, and others living and developing side by side throughout the empire was essentially thrown asunder. So gradually, Armenians were portrayed, not only in Harput but everywhere in the Ottoman Empire, as a disruptive element preventing the development of the empire. Their cultural, economic, and educational abilities were no longer seen as enriching impulses. On the contrary, they had become threats for the CUP's vision based on Turkishness and Turkification. And for the CUP leaders, the entire issue had become a struggle between Armenians, and Turks. In his memoirs, Vahe Tachjian called the CUP approach a struggle for life. And we get the impression that when he wrote these lines, he had already fully grasped the CUP ideology, this kind of social Darwinist ideologies, and their ideas that paved the way for the implementation of the Armenian genocide. There was fertile ground in the Harput region for the spread of this line of thinking. Local Muslims, Turks or Kurds, could not match the Armenians' economic and educational strength. These inflamed the suspicions and jealousy of the CUP administrators. The silk and cotton factories owned by Armenians in Mamüretülaziz and Harput, the iron foundry, the presence of Armenian merchants, Armenian tradesmen everywhere in the town and villages, the development of a rich and unprecedented Armenian educational network within the region, and the inflow of money and economic skills from the United States had all become thorns in the eyes of the local CUP administrators. The national bourgeoisie, a Muslim middle class which the CUP ideologues were seeking to support, hardly existed in this particular region in Harput. Even though Armenian-Turkish harmony continued on a formal basis, all it would take was a radical change in conditions so that the nuances of CUP understanding of the Ottoman state would appear explicitly. And prior to this, as viewed from Harput, the reforms brought by the constitution were only skin deep. There is the widespread notion that the CUP leadership was ready to resolve the land issue. This was a very important issue at that time. So that was during the first month after the 1908 constitution. The land issue, as I said, that was a very important topic. The land issue concerned mainly the Armenians. It was the land that was usurped by local Kurdish, mainly Kurdish beys and aghas from the Armenians, but not only from the Armenians, it was also taken from the local Kurds, local Kurd villagers. It happened in the 18th century, even 17th century, but during the Tanzimat period, this reform period at the beginning or in the mid-19th century, there was some reforms and some Armenians recovered their properties, their lands. But during the Sultan Hamid time, his policy was based on local chieftains, local Kurdish chieftains. Many chieftains, many Aghas and Beys found the time appropriate to assert again many lands from Armenian villagers and from Kurdish villagers. So during the first years or the first months of the, after the constitution, the CUP leaders, with their declaration, gave some hope that this land issue will be resolved. But yeah. But later, I mean, after some months, after 1908, forging friendly relations with the Kurdish Aghas and powerful tribal chieftains and not antagonizing them became the CUP's primary task. And this was to the consternation, of course, of the peasants made landless by them. So clearly the CUP brass was playing a double game. On the one hand, it negotiated with the Armenian political leaders while placating the Kurdish Aghas and Beys. So the unresolved land issue soon intensified the already tense situation in the eastern regions of the Ottoman Empire, where Armenian villagers were at the mercy of Kurdish feudal chieftains. And given these unstable conditions, the Armenian political parties, the AORF and the Hınçak party, launched a drive to arm Armenians in these regions. So bringing weapons to these regions was a violation of the law. But it is important to say that it was often done openly and with the knowledge of the local authorities. It is impossible to write about events and daily existence in Harput without some reflections on the genocide, which terminated all local Armenian life. While we do not seek to provide a detailed description of those final affairs, we will raise some points that relate to a few thoughts broached in this paper. So after the declaration of general conscription, thousands of soldiers were assembled in the Harput plain, preparing to join the Ottoman Third Army on the Russian-Turkish front. The soldiers were housed mainly in Huseynik garrison, Huseynik, which was a town just close to Harput town. So they were housed in Huseynik garrison as well as in the adjacent hills or in village homes, and many of them were Armenian villages. So in the town of Harput, the buildings of Euphrates College were requisitioned by the government, and 4,000 Ottoman soldiers were barracked there. But the devastating defeat of the Ottoman army at Sarıkamış on the Russian-Turkish front only fanned existing anti-Armenian sentiment. The main reason for the defeat was soon credited to the treason of the Armenian soldier. And in his memoirs, Donabe Ülecan writes, quote, "For a Turk from Harput, the enemy was far away and unnoticeable. But there was an enemy right by their side. It was the Armenian, with his cross, with his belfry, with his schools, with his prosperous economic progress. When the enemy seized land from his country, the Armenian also seized rights from them. He snatched freedom and rose from the level of slave to that of a citizen. It was necessary to bring him down. He had to fall to the status of a slave," unquote. And a few weeks after war was declared, the Capuchin missionaries of the lower district of Harput left the town. Local Turks immediately broke down the door of the Capuchin church and threw the church bell down to the ground, trampling it underfoot. And the same local Turks attempt to remove the cross atop the church. The mayor of Harput, Asaf Bey, personally removed the wooden cross from the altar, broke it, and stood on it. Such symbolic acts increased in Harput and elsewhere. Local Armenians, however, remained passive, silent observers of events happening around them. When Armenians took to rebellion in Van, persecutions intensified also in Harput. Word spread that the Armenians in Harput were also preparing for an armed rebellion. And on this issue, Lulejan writes in his memoirs that the CUP inspectors reached Harput in April 1915, and hold a secret meeting attended by Turkish officials, prominent individuals, Kurdish aghas, and tribal chieftains in the local CUP club in the town of Harput. It is at this meeting that Armenians are declared as enemies of the Ottoman homeland. A terrible process soon follows. The local authorities, in response, unleashed mass arrests of Armenian notables, intellectuals, community activists. Armenian notables were aware of such secret meetings, but they opposed to rebellion. They believed that to rebel was foolhardy when 4,000 soldiers were camped in the Euphrates College. They did not believe that a genocidal process was going on. For them, this was the final crisis of the Turkish army, and the empire would soon collapse at the hand of the victorious allies. In the meantime, one of the priorities of the local authorities was to find the hidden cache of Armenian weapons. CUP inspectors arrived in Harput. Demands were made on arrested Armenians to hand over their arms. And as we have seen, the procurement of arms by Armenians during the preceding years was not a secret. The local CUP leaders were well aware of what was going on. For instance, they knew which local Vahe Tachjian leader was involved in the arms trade. The arming of Armenians reached its peak when the CUP and the Vahe were allies, and in essence was a defense mechanism against reactionary circles in the empire. In other words, and it may sound ironic, the weapons in Armenian hands were envisaged as a means to defend the constitutional order, and thus the state from reactionary forces opposed to the 1908 revolution. But conditions had changed, however. Arms caches were discovered one after the other, and as was in the case in other Armenian populated towns in the Ottoman Empire, the uncovered firearms were transformed to the courtyard, in this case, so in the Harput region, so they were all transformed in the courtyard of the municipality of Harput and Mamüretülaziz Mezile, with the objective of making the Armenian threat more real. Ottoman army rifles and bombs were added to the pile. And this was all put on display for local Muslims, Kurds and Turks of Harput, and later for those of Mamüretülaziz Mezile. Furthermore, under the supervision of the police, Vahe Tachjian and Askanaz Sursurian, two of the Harput region's Armenian photographers, there were no other photographers in this region, they were all Armenians, were escorted in to photograph this collection, the best evidence of treason. And it was during the first weeks of June 1915, Donabe Lulejan Ovanes Ludikanyan were also arrested. Like countless other Armenians in the town of Harput, these two men were subject to terrible acts of torture while jailed. The two friends then found themselves in the same prison cell. In a trembling voice, Ludikanyan asked his friend, "Of course, you were beaten for the Armenian letters possession," and Lulejan's answer was in the affirmative. It turns out that local Turks, especially members of the CUP, had harbored a 3-year hatred for the celebrations making the creation of the Armenian alphabet and for its organizers. This pent-up malice, jealousy, and enmity would explode in 1915. Lulejan mentions an episode of his torture while in jail that reveals the mentality of the local CUP. Thus he was paraded, bloodied and tortured before a group of local Turks and Kurds in the government building, in Harput government building. He was rained with abuse and words of defamation. And the municipality Bashkatib, the chief secretary, approached Lulevjan and said, teacher, how do you feel? You're good, very good. It's the ABC celebration. It's the ABC celebration, yeah. Don't you remember? And soon after, the acts of torture continued. The police pulled his hair and plucked out his mustache. And the same Bashkatib and another named Anteblioglu, one of his executioners, tell him, it's the ABC celebration, make merry, teacher. So despondent, disillusioned, and unable to withstand further mistreatment, they attempted suicide in their prison cell. But they were physically incapable of this final act of desperation. Even assisting one another, suicide was beyond their means. Later on, Fujikanyan was transferred to the Kırmızı Konak, the Red Mansion in Mezire, in Mamüretülaziz, that had been converted into a prison. He would then be killed on the road of exile. And as mentioned before, Lulevjan was able to escape to Dersim, the Dersim Mountains, where he wrote down his experiences. And I will conclude this part of my presentation with another quote of Lulevjan. In the chapter describing the tortures he experienced in jails, Lulevjan, a pacifist, a rational man, who, till the end, believed in the harmony between the various populations constituting the empire, the reforming power of education, the struggles to explain in words the final fall and destruction of his world in Harput, which he had held dear. He wrote, we progressed to suffer, and to the extent that we strove for the highest level of education and integrity, the worse our torments became. Unquote. Thank you. Until now, it is not published. It will be put online in the coming months. And you can find my presentation or a detailed version of this presentation in the chapter Political Life and in the subtitle, under the subtitle Ottoman Constitution. So life after the Constitution until 1915. Of course, it is not only about Harput. We have also many articles on different other Armenian inhabited places like Palu, Marash, Zeytun, Hajan, Sis, Dotyol, Agan, what else? Dersim, and many others. Of course, until now we don't cover, we are not able to cover all the Armenian inhabited places in the Ottoman Empire, but till now, perhaps we have done 10% of the global work, I mean, based on our primary sources to reconstruct life, to reconstruct Armenian memory in the Ottoman Empire. So, Hushamadian is a project established or founded in Berlin in 2010. We are a very little group of persons. So first we founded an association, a non-profit association, who owned this website. I'm the only full-time researcher in this project. We have also a part-time designer. We have also our different authors and translators who are remunerated following their work. So we are a little group of persons, but we have also our networks of friends who help us who contribute with their knowledge, a map designer or another a person who had a very huge collection of postcards, another person who is a specialist of Armenian music. So every time that we need their help, we ask them, and they are ready to contribute with their knowledge to this project. So here is the map of the Ottoman Empire. You have seen already this one, I think, in my presentation. So yeah, it's a huge place. We don't cover only in our project only Western Armenia and Cilicia, the main Armenian inhabited places of the Ottoman Empire. Western Armenia, Armenian historical lands, and Cilicia. But our aim is to present or to present studies on all areas, all places, all towns and villages inhabited by Armenians before 1915. So that could be also places like Konya, Ankara, Kayseri, Yozgat, Izmit, Bardizak, or the Arab provinces of the old Ottoman Empire, like Baghdad, Aleppo, Jerusalem, where before 1915 there was already a very active Armenian community life there. So the easiest way to visit the website or to find the different articles is the map. You can select any province of the Ottoman Empire. For example, yes, of course, we will do Harput. I select Harput or Van. You want to see articles on Van or Harput? Harput. Okay. This is the province, a more detailed, much more detailed map of Harput province. So we have here articles on Dersim, on the Harput plain, on Agan, and when you click with your cursor on Harput, then the map of the Harput plain will open. And here you see all Armenian inhabited villages and the two main cities, towns of this region. And the ones with red that you see there are the old Armenian villages that now are under submerged by water because of the dam that the Turkish government built the Euphrates River. So here there is many themes. You can choose, for example, economy, and there you will see, until now we have only one article. It's about trades in Harput. Working with visual materials are very important in this project. So we try to collect all kinds of related illustrations, like persons, tradesmen from Harput, or pictures of workshops in Harput and surrounding areas. Not only we present text, but the aim is also to present all kinds or all possible illustrations about concerning this subject. These kind of drawings, for example, are taken from old books written by survivors of the genocide who wrote many books about their native villages and towns. And this is also our main primary sources. So based on the information that we found in these books, in these old books, this Hushamadian genre of books written by survivors, we take the important information, and based on this information, on these sources, we try to write scholarly articles about different themes concerning life in the Ottoman Empire. So, and each drawing are reworked by our team and making them much more captive and much more communicative. And every time when we find names, personal names of tradesmen, for example, in this case, we put them in the website, and in this way our aim is to make the text much more vivid, with life, with dynamic. Yeah. So on Harput there is also many other articles. For example, in local characteristics, you can find articles on houses in Harput and in villages of Harput, how they build houses. For example, this one is taken from Parchanch, Armenian author whose name is Manuk Zeron. He was a very good author who wrote a very good book on life, mainly agricultural life in Parchanch. And here he drew a house. It's a house which belongs to one of the Armenian notables of the village. And of course, this wasn't the drawing that you can find in his book. So our team tried to make good looking, and so it's based on the information that we find in his drawing. We didn't change anything in it, but we didn't change the plan of the house, but we added some colors, we added some, we didn't add, we had also some agricultural tools, for example. This one is added by our team. But it's also part of a village house. We know that in each village house you can find these kind of tools. So this was the first floor of the, and the second floor is this one. Another article is about games and toys in Harput. You can find plenty of information on this in this kind of old books, Fushamadian genre of books. So here, here, of course, for us it was much more difficult to illustrate games and toys that were used or that were played in Harput. We don't have this kind of toys. We don't. So we have been a little creative, and so we draw. And it's not a secret to say that these drawings are based on the drawings of a well-known Belgian painter of 18th century, and we took the same pictures because we knew that this kind of games were also played in Harput because the descriptions are there. So we put fez to some others, and we put some shalva to the others, and so it became a kind of Harput boys playing with their toys and playing their games. There is other that from this drawing, for example, this one, which in Harput dialect was called Ambaresh or Ambarosh. Is there anybody who know this play? Because in my childhood I played it in Lebanon, and it was called Uzun Eshek, the long donkey. But here, of course, because my grandparents came from Cilicia, so they were Turkish speakers. But here you can find an Armenian name for that, and I think nobody knows that in Armenian academic circles that this game had also a very Armenian name, and it is taken from the Harput purpose, from the Harput dialect. Yeah, this is a very classical. So they put the fez on the back of the friend, and he should jump on top of it without the fez should stay on the back. So this is very old pictures from Armenian miniature painting. Yeah, here was yeah, the Oyunu, or the camel game. Yeah, the description is there. I will not enter in details. So yeah, this one is not from Harput. This is from Mush. But it was there was the lack of illustration was so big that normally we don't use pictures from other areas in articles in Harput, for example. But this one, yeah, it was like a priority to illustrate and to give an image to the description of the game. Another article that I can show here. Yeah, on education and sport, the schools in Harput, there is so many. They are so important that at the end, and this is a very exception in our website, that we make in two parts. There is so many schools and so much information on the schools that it wasn't easy to put all the information in one article. So this is the Diophragtes College here, the buildings of Diophragtes College in Harput, in the town of Harput, Diophragtes College again. So this was the graduates of the Diophragtes College. I will not be. I don't want to be silly, but this is a Turkish school in Harput. And the picture we found in a German review. So every time we put also names. Names are very important to us because most of them are killed during the genocide, and to put names to this text, to put names to these articles, the names of teachers, the names of students is part of our work to reconstruct a past, to reconstruct a memory. So this is all about Harput School, and there is, of course, many other information and pictures. And yeah, another part of our project is to work with our readers, with our friends, with the persons who are visiting our website. And the result of this kind of cooperation with our own readers, with our own visitors, are the memoirs of Bagdasar Bagdasaryan, or Bagdasar Bagdasaryan, which is really something astonishing, and it was given to us or sent to us by Martin Baxter, who is here. So it's the memoirs of his grandfather, and he described life in Verinhoch, the Upper Hoch, which is a village. Mixed village where Turks and Armenians live together, and he lived there in this village until 1888. So he left his village in 1888 and he arrived directly to Fresno, I think, yeah. But what is important to us that it's the only person. So these memoirs were not published when we received. It's the only person who gave information on life in this tiny village in Harput Plain. So in Vahe's book, which is famous about his text on the Harput and Harput villages, there is only 7 or 8 pages on Verinhoch. But here you can find 100 pages, 100 well-written, very full pages about life, about local histories in this village, Armenian village of Verinhoch. So it was very important through the eyes of this author, this memoirist, to reconstruct life, to see the reconstruction of Armenian memory in this tiny village. And this was an unpublished memoir. So there are others there are other stories like this that our visitors were sending to us, and this kind of contribution are very important in our project to reconstruct Armenian local histories, to reconstruct Armenian memoirs in different towns and villages of the Ottoman Empire. And another example, now I will go out from Harput, sorry, and it's in Marash this time. Yes. For example, here, another person from New York sent to us, a young girl from New York sent to us the recordings of his great-grandfather, who was from Marash, and he is Bovandes Cherishian, or John Cherishian, and in the 1950s, there is his son made an audio recording of his songs that he learned in Marash, and together, in parallel to the songs, he is telling some stories about her mother, about life in Marash, about Armenian church traditions in Marash. So it's very important. So we took all these recordings and we transcribed it. We put all the text and it was all in Armenian. It was all the songs and his testimonies were all in Armenian. And so we translated it into English. And the person who sent to us, her name is Nora Lesserson. She was not able to understand the Armenian. But she was conscious that it was an important material for our project, and so she sent to us, and immediately, or in a few months, we transcribed all the text and translated it, and now not only we save an important heritage from Marash, but this person, this Nora Lesserson, was able to know more about her grandfather, the story of her grandfather, what she was telling to his descendants, and in this way we played the role of a bridge between one generation of Armenian survivors who speak, who read, who wrote in Armenian, and another generation, this new generation in the United States, who unfortunately don't understand this language. There is the language factor that keep them away from the heritage of their grandparents or grandparents. So we play the role of this bridge. And it is not surprising that the most of our readers, of the visitors of this website are from the United States. And another very symbolic image of the website is the second largest group of our visitors are from Turkey. And now, because our articles are in 3 languages, we started to put articles in Armenian and English, and from January 2015 on, we started also their Turkish translation. So until now, not all the articles are translated into Turkish, but we have some 10 articles translated, and from now on, all new articles will be put online in 3 languages. And many of them, as I said, are from visitors are from Turkey. We feel that there is the thirst. They want to learn more in Turkey about the Armenian heritage of their own villages and their own towns, because the most of the visitors are from places east of Anatolia, that means Armenian historical lands, Cilicia, or towns formerly inhabited by Armenians. So we are also playing something like a bridge between this new generation of Turks who want to know better their own history because the state propaganda is presenting things differently, but through a website, which is very easy to visit it in every village or in every town, we are presenting things differently. Or maybe I can show also an animation. Or okay, then no animation. That's good.
Show it.
Okay. Besides these visual materials and text that we are presenting in our website, we also trying to make some animation films where things are presented differently. For example, we take an old postcard or an image from, let's say, from Harput, and we try to animate them. To enter music, to put music on this animation films, or to put text on these films. For example, the thing that I want to show here is a picture of Harput, exactly from Gölcük or Zog. This is a village just close to the lake of Gölcük, of Zog, and each year there was the festivities of Surpaspatzazin, Holy Mother of God, where thousands of pilgrims from all over Harput region were gathering there, and during 3 or 4 days there was big festivities in this village or around this village. So we took a picture of Zog or Gölcük village, and the two persons who were talking there, there are 2 persons who are talking there in Armenian, but not in Armenian exactly, because they are talking in Harput dialect. And the person who is talking, the main person who is talking there, or the main actor, let's say, is someone who is from the United States and now living in Berlin. But what is particular with him is that his mother language was Harput dialect, because he grew up in the East Coast with his grandparents, who were from Huseinik and Harput town. So talking in Harput dialect is very natural with him. He's Mikhail Boshkarian, a well-known translator too. So we created a dialogue which is related to life in Harput. So I will show this one, and then the door will be open to questions.
Երեսը կորի հետպես դնգերես, հովագի մանու, դոն կորե, աստվծածն է, հլ է դարդերդ մորցիր, քիչ մի ուրախացիր։
Վայ, բաբու, աստան պարոյական տին համոտ չէ, կյանքիս մեջ ասկան սայր ու սոյախան ներդեղ հավակված չին լզներ։ Աստվծածն է, դիհավակնին, հրպետ է, կերտեն է, ծծնին, օրն երեխան ապ գիտ է, գերուխում, ժաջուխ, Տոն, սարվատեր, խեյմա, շիշկե բապիրով, ուստավ, իսոտ, տոմատես, խուշան, բաստեղ, լավ, ռոջ, չսես նտան հերուկեն, թուսմիարին սրին, սախոշան, թալկի, իշրի, խեխտան, կվրա, հելամետի, երգավան,
Մեկը գսեյա, այս կարվա, Աստվածածնին մեր հովագիմին հեչ չի տեսնել, հուսը արդեն գդրած գլի, անոր հայգանուշը 6-երը 15 կմոտենա արդեն։
Ինչ խոսք է այդտուն կրուխ։ Ոնց ամենից գիտետ խոդես աղջկանս կորսել։ Բան ես, իմ հայգանուշիս 1001 զողն է։ Ես չի միտար։ Հերկեշին գարջիկը մզինչ, թողուսացին պես խորաթել են։ Նախանցեն վիճատին։
Իսկ նալբանտենց բոյով բիչիվով հագոպը սողգակի
Շատ շեղածին անունը թող չլսին։
բարոն հագոպն է։ Իրոր ես հովագիմով է։
Աղիգին բարոն Հակոբ, աղիգին, շնորհակալություն, ինչ տանեմ որ դուք եք եկել։ Ականուշս լավ ծեր խաթր գնացին։